Welcome to the Coffee and Counseling Podcast, where two licensed psychotherapists give you their unfiltered opinions on mental health, wellness, life, and everything in between. It's real, raw, and ready to challenge what you think you know. Get ready for some tough love. Before we begin, just a brief disclaimer, this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not take the place of therapy. We hope you enjoy today's session. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session of Coffee and Counseling, where we don't spill the tea, but the coffee will be piping hot while we talk about all things counseling. We're your hosts, Rachel Steinhardt
and Stephanie Van Shake. Do you ever feel like you talk to people or maybe even see people here and there, but at the end of the day, you don't feel like you have any real friends? Or maybe you feel like you never have anyone you can hang out with or confide in. Maybe you are totally feeling isolated and barely seeing people at all. We're going to talk all about the loneliness epidemic that is currently plaguing our society. So grab your coffee and let's get into it. Rachel, why don't you get us started with one high and one low of your week?
Okay, so getting off of the high of the last episode that we went on, I now have more family coming in this weekend, which I'm so excited for because they're two of my sisters that I haven't seen in months. So I'm very excited. And it's also really important for my kids to just have that connection because like they're so young that if my family doesn't come visit them, they forget who they are. And it's really sad. So I'm very excited to have that time together and to just, be able to connect on that more intimate level. I would really say my low, which Steph and I were just we're really just talking about before we started recording, is just feeling super overwhelmed lately with just not having enough time or energy to do the amount of things that need to get done. And the truth is I really am, and I'm not just saying this, I really am grateful that that's my low because Lord knows, and whoever's been listening, there are so many other things that can go wrong. But I'm just really feeling like tired and I think burnt out, and I'm really trying to spend some time to utilize like my own tools and skills to figure out how to create pockets of self-care, how to create moments that feel like a vacation because I really, really need one right now and I can't take one. So just trying to meet myself where I'm at with like the reality of the situation. Cause right, just because you feel like you need a trip to Fiji doesn't mean you're going to get one, but how can I create some element of like peace and nurturing myself so that the burnout doesn't, take over. And that's probably like where I am on the lower end. But I do know that a form of that is honestly spending time with my family. And they always like recharge my battery to a degree. So I am really excited to see them and to just have that burst of energy again. But what about you, Steph?
Yeah, well, one, I'm so excited for you and having family visit. That's always a nice thing. So for me, my high is I just got back from a vacation. I went on a cruise and it was definitely nice and a break from normal living. And I tried to get a tan, and Denver seems to work for me. Either I get burnt or I stay exactly where I am. So it's totally okay. And then I think that my skin tanning had ceased after the Jersey Shore era of like doing the tanning all the time.
Yeah, that's so funny.
My skin's like, no, never again. And then my low was at the end of it, I actually got sick. It wasn't really that bad, but I started getting really sneezy. In the last couple of days, I was like very sneezy. I feel pretty good now. And I think it's always like the one positive, if I'm going to find a silver lining to being sick, is like when you feel healthy again, it's like a renewed gratitude for just like,
oh my gosh, 100%. By the way, I don't know if anyone else has seen this, but this has been popping on my social media so much, and I'm so like intrigued to like think about the psychological implications of this. But apparently there's this retreat that people have been there's all types of different wellness, mental health, whatever retreats. There's apparently this retreat where they take people and they like literally blindfold them for multiple days straight.
Oh my God.
And at the end of the retreat, they like take off the blindfold. So it's almost like they're coming out of a blindness and seeing for the first time. And everyone's reaction to see when they take it off is like they're crying their eyes out and just like looking at nothing so crazy. They're just like out in the wilderness. This is the most beautiful thing, as if, because they have like this newfound appreciation for I guess just their eyes and the world and light, and I'm sure they just went on this healing journey, so it's very overwhelming. And like
Mhm.
the therapist in me is sitting there going, I wonder like the traumatic effects that that has just had on like
That's what I'm thinking too. I'm
I'm
like,
like, I
"Hmm."
don't know how positive this is, but I do think it's interesting. Like, whoever came up with that concept and whoever agreed to come up with that concept, like, please go to actual therapy. But also, my point is, I totally get what you're saying. And it just reminded me of that video because it was literally like you would think that these people were blind their whole lives and we're seeing for the first time at their reaction.
Mhm.
But
Well,
it's
you
an
know,
incredible thing.
we never, sometimes we really take for granted the things that we have. And when it's gone, then when we get
Mhm.
it back, it's like that renewed sense of gratitude and appreciation for whatever that thing is. So that seems to be a little like that, your example, a little bit of a messed up, but extreme, but also really interesting. Um, Example of it. And so thank you for sharing that. I am very curious about the psychological implications of it as
Right. That
well.
was like my first
Yeah.
thought. I'm like, I haven't figured out yet if I think this is like hot or not. But
Right.
anyway,
I can't.
hysterical.
So let's talk a little bit about why we wanted to cover this. So in today's world, we are truly experiencing a loneliness epidemic where people are feeling more lonely and isolated than ever before. And we really are wondering, like, how is this even possible when we are now more connected than any time throughout history, despite having maybe over 100 Facebook friends or thousands or hundreds of TikTok followers? You might still feel alone, or maybe you're in a room full of people yet still feel lonely. These are things we're hearing left and right in our field, but also beyond it. So, we're hoping this podcast session can help to explore a little bit more about why this is happening, the dangers of it, and what you can do about it.
Yeah. And I'm really excited to get into this because
Mhm.
I don't know about you, Steph, but even before COVID was a thing, because I know a lot of people associate loneliness with COVID at this point in time,
Mhm.
hashtag PTSD.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
But the truth is that I've been seeing this as an ongoing problem, not only in the therapeutic space, but just like in the world
Mhm.
for years. And I think it's very underrated that one of the most, I would say, like core elements of things that I talk about with every single person I work with, regardless of what they're coming to me for, is that there is an element of loneliness playing into their life as a factor of whatever it is that they're going through.
Mhm.
Um, and the part that's so heartbreaking is that everyone feels so alone in it. Like I'm the only one experiencing this, and everyone else is, living the dream. But there are so many people that are feeling alone, and it is really, truly heartbreaking. And it's just something that I think we've tried to come up with a lot of solutions to, but I don't know that even within the therapeutic space, we've really like fully cracked the code for it.
Mhm.
Um, and it's really just crazy. Like many people are experiencing this thing of like being surrounded but still feeling invisible, or like having this thing where we are either coming off as really busy or wanting to come off as really independent, but like we just are alone and like don't have another choice, or we are actually so busy and so independent that we end up shutting people out of our lives, or we feel
Mhm.
like okay, we're super introverted, so like I want to spend time with people but like it feels really overwhelming, or feeling like okay, I have all of these like acquaintances
Mhm.
and people that I smile at and say hi to, maybe know me on a surface level, but at the end of the day, if I needed to call somebody at 2 a.m., like there's nobody that would pick up the phone. If I really needed help, there's nobody that would pick up the phone. Or being able to maybe go to coffee with a friend and being able to have a genuine conversation about like what is actually happening with you and not just like the last thing that you bought at Target. So
Mhm.
it really is hard. I think so many people are experiencing this. I also think it's incredibly multifaceted as to why this is happening, like the different reasons for different people that they get to this emotion. I think it can become a very complex issue. I actually just had this conversation with a client in one of my sessions last week where she was telling me like that she's experiencing this very heightened, and that a lot of her friends are like hanging out without her, and
Mm.
she's just feeling very isolated and kind of left out. And we were getting more into the conversation, and this person is like starting to explain to me how she's been feeling really frustrated with some of the activities they were choosing to do, and she's going through a lot of her own things, so she started like separating herself from the group. And I'm like, all right, so let's back up.
Mhm.
I don't know. First of all, I mean, I validated her because I can understand why she chose to do what she did. But
Yeah.
I was like, it doesn't sound like they kicked you out. It sounds like you removed yourself. And like, how
Mhm.
does that resonate? How does that land with you? And she's like, honestly, you're 100% right. I did.
Mhm.
And and we talked about the different ways in which she can deal with that situation. I don't want to rehash this therapy session, but my point is like sometimes it's even self inflicted and we don't even realize that it's self inflicted.
Mhm.
So there's just so many different parts to this, but not only is it such a problem, but it's also a dangerous problem. Like people don't even realize loneliness increases the risk of death as much as smoking 15 cigarettes a day,
It's crazy.
which is like a real report. You can go look it up. It really is such a real thing. When people say like, and obviously this can come in different capacities, but when people die, which is a real thing, like they die from a broken heart, and obviously many things can cause that. you know it's just like the mental health and physical health are so intertwined,
Yeah.
and experiencing loneliness is just such a core issue in so many other areas and obstacles in life, and it's just something we really need to think about as we're like looking at our wellness and life as a whole. Like, is that a place that's lacking in your life, and how is it impacting the other areas?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that you bring up so many good points. Like one that in history, I think that history really helps to crack the code as to what might be some of the resolutions to help with this, because this is more of a newer phenomenon. And I would agree with you that it was something that started pre-pandemic. I think that the pandemic was kind of the nail in the coffin that really like exponentially grew this crisis of
Yeah.
loneliness. And we're definitely going to explore that a little bit more. I'm really excited for today's session. I think it's so needed, especially considering how many people struggle in this way and maybe aren't even really identifying it as loneliness, not understanding how they're lonely because there's so many people around them or they're so connected or so many people know them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about how we got here. So technology and social media certainly have played a role in this. So like I said in a little bit earlier, where we might have a load of friends on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, whatever social media it is, it can be very surface level, if a connection at all. I know that back in, well, like when Facebook was first like a thing and we were all getting our profiles, like I was friends with people from like my high school that I never spoke with and we barely probably knew each other's names. But for some reason, we all wanted to have like this collection of as many friends as you can get. I think that's kind of like what was going on in the early dates, like MySpace before Facebook, even if I don't know, some people might not even know what MySpace is who might be listening to
Or
this.
the same concept as followers, right? Like, oh,
Mhm.
I have this amount of people thinking I'm interesting enough to like follow my journey.
Yeah. And I don't know. And it's just like an honorable mention that I think we should put in here that Rachel, did you have a MySpace?
No.
Okay, well, consider yourself lucky. It was like the beginning of like social media, obviously. There were a lot of fun parts about it, but MySpace had this thing called the top 8. And for those of you who don't know, it was where you would rank your top 8 friends in MySpace. And then it started being like you could do top 4, you could do top 16. And you knew that it started with social anxiety, that if you got into it with a friend or you guys weren't hanging out as much, like you obsessively checked that person's profile to see if you
Oh
were
my gosh, this sounds like my worst nightmare.
so toxic, so toxic. And looking back on it, because it's like, oh well, why am I now number 2 when I was number 1? And is it because this person did this? And it really started creating social anxiety. And when we talk about social media, that is like the the parent of it. Like Freud
Yeah.
is to psychology, MySpace is to social media. And, that could be really isolating too when you feel like
Mhm.
this is your best friend and now you're literally being ranked. And
Yeah.
then you're not feeling you can even confide in your best friend about why am I number two or why am I number three?
I think that's, by the way, that was the silent killer that's continuing, which is that social media is removing the actual conversation. Like
Mhm.
you literally just said, like, oh, instead of like going over and being like, oh, I had an issue with how you did something, or you hurt my feelings, and now I'm honestly feeling like disconnected from you, or I feel like I can't trust you. You're like moving a friend in a ranking, or even using it like as a joke, like you're second or you're third, and you're trying to
Mhm.
just like trying to get attention online, but you're really eliminating conversations that should probably be had in order to just maintain healthy relationships. And that, it sounds like, was the first exposure to a world where half of these conversations, if not all of these conversations, were removed.
Yeah. And then on top of that, with social media, a lot of it's like curating your life and you're showing, generally speaking, a lot of people are showing their highlight reels and completely neglecting the things that are make them vulnerable or the things that they're sad about. And let me make it clear, you are absolutely not obligated to share anything on social media, but
Mhm.
we have to be mindful consumers about that because it can make it so that we are feeling like more competitive with our friends or uh, we think that we know them and we have expectations for them and then they might actually feel or we might actually feel as though we have to keep that facade going and then not having genuine conversations about like with our social support network about things that we are struggling with because you're presenting one way online and that might make you feel as though you can't really share like I am actually struggling with this and talking to a friend about it, which can further make you feel isolated. In addition to social media technology, there are cultural shifts too that have happened more recently, where, especially in the Western culture, we are more of an individualistic type of society as opposed to some Eastern cultures and also some religious cultures too, where there is more of a collectivistic type of culture where we are more dependent on each other. And Western culture, it really values like individualism. We also value like hustle culture and glorification of independence. Something that I find really interesting about this whole independence thing, which I think also ties very much into this loneliness epidemic, is this idea of like, oh, I don't need this person. Oh, I don't need anyone. I could do this all on my own. And that is something much newer because we are not seeing all the people we depend on in everyday life. Back 100 years ago and more, we saw the people who were picking our fruit, the people who were selling it to us, the people who were preparing our meals if it's not us. There are so many different things that are there are so many different people that we depend on that we don't even see in our daily lives and we can have this faux sense of we could do everything completely on our own because the house we live in is already built. We don't have to depend on a builder for that anymore. We don't have to depend on going out and having multiple people tend to our farmlands and feeding each other. So it could really give this sense of no one else is needed, and I think that that really makes it harder for people to connect to other people and be willing to be vulnerable to connect with other people and recognize that I do need you, I do have a dependence on you, and having count and dependence on each other.
Yeah. This is also making me think about like the cultural aspect of this. I say this all the time, and I think, Steph, I've had this conversation with you as well, where I know this is very, very, very true in like the Jewish culture, but I'm also very sure it's true for any culture that really has like I would say like a group of people with a shared belief and a strong, and I say really like hence strong sense of community. But I'm going to speak to mine because that's what I know best, right? So like in Judaism, if you're an observant Orthodox Jew, even if you're not, it just adds an element of the community when you are. Like we pick a place of worship first, And then we build our entire lives around that.
Mhm.
So like we pick, so imagine like you were picking a church, and then based off of your church, you were picking where you're going to live, and then where you're going to send your kids to school, and then where you're going to go to the gym, and all the things are built off of this place of worship. But also there are 900 families doing that exact same thing. And so now around this place of worship, you have 900, 1,000, 3,000 people, whatever it is. I'm playing with the numbers depending on the community that you live with, but that is just like a built-in community. And then it's not just, I know with church, it's like you have a Sunday service, and I'm sure there's other types of services, but it's not just that. Like with a temple, we have like programming for adults, programming for kids, things during the week, things on the weekend. We have a built-in like the guys have their own thing, the girls have a sisterhood. Like if
Mhm.
we are going through something really good, like someone having a child, or something really horrible, like somebody passing away, there's automatically a meal train built for you. There's people that will come help with your kid. Like you're just really never alone. And I'm
Mhm.
definitely sure that there are still people in the community who feel lonely. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here saying that, we've cracked the code, but it's a lot easier to
Mhm.
feel a sense of, friendship, to be able to build those relationships, to be able to get out of your own little bubble. There's so many opportunities for you to connect with other human beings, um that it's like a built-in sense of like I can move to literally Timbuktu, and the minute that I move there, I have a built-in community.
Mhm.
And I think that that's something that a lot of other people, especially when you're not part of a cultural or religious or whatever group, that it, it, they don't have that built-in thing, and that's really really hard. And I'm not saying that at all to try to sway someone to do that. I'm stating it as a fact. I think that
Mhm.
when you are like, let's say you move into a new community, you don't know a soul. You don't, you're going in, you could like not show up somewhere for 15 days and nobody would even know the difference. Like,
Mhm.
whenever I hear these like horrendous stories of somebody like passing away in their home and nobody realized for like whatever amount of days or weeks, like it sounds crazy, but it's not. Because like
Mhm.
why, how would anybody know? If you're not part of anything, if you're not connected to anything,
Mhm.
especially today with like remote work,
Yeah.
it's really just like a scary concept that when you don't have us. And by the way, you can have this in smaller ways, in various different forms. Like you can have your community at the gym, your community at the art center, your community in the library. I'm not even trying to make this about religion. It's
Mhm.
really just about creating a sense of attachment to other people that goes beyond like texting or talking on the phone or a social media post, where you're having that human interaction. And I think it's so important. And actually for me, when I'm working with somebody and this is a topic of conversation, that is the first thing I tell them to do. I'm
Mhm.
like, figure out what you like and get involved in an in-person
Yeah.
way of doing it. Like, you like baking, go join a cooking class. So you want to work out, like go to classes in the gym aside from just showing up, or go say hi to somebody in the gym and be like, hey, like, can you show me that workout? Or do you want to go out for like shakes after or something? Try it. And it's hard. It's scary. I think people have to talk about this. Like, honestly, it's a little bit like just as scary as dating, or
Mhm.
like going up to somebody and asking them out. It's because our world doesn't normalize it.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
don't go up to someone and be like, hey, like, I feel like we're interested in the same things. You seem really chill. I love your outfit. Do you want to go out for lunch? Like, someone would like call 911. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, it's a different world, but and I know it's really a lot more difficult too to make friends as an adult. And that is
Yes.
something I certainly talk to my clients about who are, struggling to try to find community and find friends when they might have had a loss of friends or a friend group or whatnot. And then especially if there is a trauma as a result of how that happened, it makes it
Hmm.
that much difficult. I mean, think about like in elementary school. It was so easy to make friends. Like it was something like, hey, I like your shirt. You want to be best friends? And like, okay, we're best friends for the next year. And like that's how it happened. And I
That
think
wasn't my experience, Steph, but I'm so happy that it was yours.
Well, thank you, thank you. I think that we can learn something about like from kids before they developed
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of the social anxieties, and I think that is getting younger and younger, unfortunately. And I think social media is a big part of that as well, because that's the only thing I could kind of see is the difference that kids are exposed to and younger ages that is different than a couple decades ago, because now they're like, oh, they're following all these influencers, and there's like this quickly desire to like grow up and be adulty, and then it's like, well, if you're a kid, like you're acting like a kid, like you're weird. They're like, there's a lot of
Mhm,
things going on with that, but that's a whole other topic that we can dive into and talk about. I love what you had talked about with community, and it reminds me too when I moved to Florida, and I
mhm,
moved to an area I literally been to twice before. One was to scout out the area, and two was to, after I already had purchased in the area, and then I moved here, and I was the first of anyone I knew who moved specifically to this area. So I was moving alone, and I knew that I am such an introvert, and that's something that isn't bad in and of itself, but I knew that because I'll be working from home, because I don't really have a need to leave my house, I knew I needed to challenge myself to make sure that I got out of the house, that I had just people around me at certain points. Instead of getting my groceries delivered, I made sure to go out to the grocery stores, get involved in finding a church, and that was something as well. But also, the community that I moved to really touted community as one of the things that was like a core value. And I always say that I was adopted by an extrovert as one of my neighbors who basically, like, I made a lot of friends. And now I have a lot of friends in this community who are my actual
mhm.
neighbors. And I'm very grateful for that, because it was a little bit anxiety provoking coming with like knowing no one and seeing like how will this work. I never thought I would have the group of friends that I do now, where like we take trips together and stuff like that, which is really nice. But again, if I didn't put myself into a little bit of an anxiety, or actually a lot of anxiety types of situations where I was willing to connect with people, then it could make you feel like even more isolated, especially when there's literally no one physically around you that you know. So we need to work with whatever our situations are to try
Yeah.
to find that community.
Just wondering, for you, what did you find like specifically was the most helpful tool in making relationships, being in that situation?
Yeah. So it was saying yes. I guess that would be the biggest thing
Okay, I
that.
love that.
Yeah, because I know the first time that I was adopted by the extrovert, and they were going to a wine party at or I don't remember what it was called, like a wine tasting party or whatever. And like they invited me the beginning of the week. It was at the end of the week. And
Mhm.
for introverts out there, you know that you kind of secretly wish, like, oh, maybe it'll just like disappear. Like, I don't really want to do this. I'm kind of like anxious about it. I'm a little nervous. Like, I wanted to do it, but you're a little anxious. So, but
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? Like the first thing that like I'm invited to, I'm going to say yes no matter what, and that's what I did. And the rest is kind of history, because
Yeah.
maybe if I didn't make that choice, that I met one of my like close friends that I have like at that party, and then it just like kind of became like a group, and who knows, maybe things would have been different, maybe not, but saying yes, and that was I probably would say the biggest thing that really helped.
Yeah, I'm also like wondering, for my New Yorkers out there, I'm gonna break this up for you a little bit. Like in New York, if this exists, then I'm unaware of it. And I don't know, Steph, what your experience is, but Steph and I both moved from New York to Florida and then moved into developments.
Hmm.
This is not a thing, as far as I'm aware,
It's
or
not.
I think as much in New York.
Mm-mm.
And it's really the funniest thing because in New York, in general, my experience, I'm speaking for my own experience, people are not friendly. They don't say hi in the street. They don't wave at you in the car. They don't like
Mm-mm.
ask how you're doing. I lived in the same place for I don't even know how long and I didn't even know my neighbors. Like
Mm-mm.
you just keep to yourself and people couldn't care less, honestly, if you lived or died. I'm sorry to sound so like so depressing, but that was just how I felt like was the vibe in New York. And I
Hmm.
moved to Florida, and I this was one of my first experiences in my development. Like my husband and I are moving in, we're driving back and forth in and out running a million errands. And every time we're driving around our development, like people that would walk would wave at us. And we literally thought like something was wrong. It was like we kept like looking behind us, like, oh, like what are they waving at? Like, who are they saying hi to? And then like when we didn't wave back, would like give us a weird look, and we didn't even know why they were giving us a weird look until finally like it clicked that I was like, honey, I think they're waving at us. And he's like, why on earth would they wave? Like we were so like, this concept of just saying hello to a stranger took a minute to adjust to, which is so sad because I am the kind of person that would totally say hello to a stranger, but I've learned to adapt to my environment. And in New York, if you say hello to a stranger, people will cross the street and be scared of you.
Yeah.
Like, what is wrong with you? Why are you saying hello to me? And in Florida, if you like don't wave and like say hello to a total stranger that you pass by, it's like rude.
Hmm. It is
And
night and day. It really
it
is.
really, and then like what I've noticed is that at least where I'm located, each development, like I'm sure everyone's still living their own lives, and I'm not pretending that everyone's sitting here best
Right.
friends. But within the developments, there are a lot of like built in groups of people who are and groups of families that are friends with each other.
Hmm.
Um, because you're just like up in each other's space, and even if you're in a development that has really large homes, like you're in a built-in community, and
Hmm.
that's just like another added thing. You have sometimes like you share a tennis court, you share a pool, you share a gym, you share a clubhouse, whatever it is that your development offers. You could have none of those amenities and still just like having that community created a really big difference. So I think even culturally, where you're located and like the norm
Yeah.
of how the people around you act is also such a big factor in the world you're able to build for yourself. Because if you're living in a space where saying hello to a stranger is considered extremely creepy, yeah, I don't blame you for being scared and having a hard time meeting new people. Like, what on earth are you supposed to do?
Hmm.
It's hard.
Yeah, that is so interesting to think about because I remember like feeling culture shock when I first moved here. And it took, and it still is weird to me that like when I first moved here, like I said, I moved alone and the people that I met were like I was suspicious of at first, I guess, like of how much they wanted to help me. And like one day, like I woke up before I was able to get like everything together for like a lawnmower. I moved in like the beginning of spring. So like it started, the grass started growing and needed to be cut and all that stuff. And my neighbor was doing it for me. And I'm like, what is going on? Like in New York, I would be in a jungle. I mean, granted, there's an HOA here, but I'd be in a jungle. No one would probably have helped. I mean, unless you actually, I mean, I'm not going to just throw it under the bus completely. I was definitely friends with a lot of neighbors that I had in New York because they were from like childhood friends that I
Yeah.
knew for a long time. But that was that. And then here, these are total strangers and saying like, and wanting to help. And most of them too are from up north. So we always have these conversations that it's like so bizarre. It's like, it's weird to me and trying to accept help from a stranger. Like, I feel like, well, what is it that you're looking for? That was something that I definitely dealt with when I first moved. So it is such a good point that depending on where you are, very
Mhm.
locally, state, culture, not that one is right and one is wrong, it's just different. And we need to acknowledge that and adjust accordingly. So, really interesting to think about.
Yeah. And I think another really big part of this is also like, I don't know if I would umbrella everything under like the mental health aspect of it, but there is such a behavioral and psychological part of whether or not you're going to accept friendship, go looking for friendship, be trusting of friendship, right? Like there are people who don't want to feel like a burden. There are people like in your situation and this doesn't even have to be to an extreme, but like a certain level of I don't trust you, or
Mhm.
maybe I don't feel safe physically, I don't feel safe, or I don't feel safe emotionally opening up to you, or I want to look like the person that has everything together. So I don't want to be open about my struggles. I don't want you to see the human parts of me. um Maybe you're like the type of person who wants everyone to think that I have a better situation than I actually have. And like, it's easier to hide that if I don't share anything with you. Maybe you're struggling with depression or anxiety or social anxiety, whatever it is. And that makes it hard to like get out of the bed to talk to somebody. Like if you struggle with self-confidence, you're not going to feel confident enough to go up to someone and have that conversation. That alone can stop you from having friends. If you don't have confidence in yourself to think anyone would want to even be friends with you, you're not even going to put yourself out there.
Mhm.
It's like that humongous fear of rejection. And then I feel like there's this really underrated part that nobody really talks about, which is it could be a financial strain to make friends, because we're sitting here, we don't know people's financial situations. And maybe somebody offered you, right? Like to say, like, let's go out for a girls' night out with like a wine night. And that's not in your budget right now. Or someone's like, hey, let's go out for a cup of coffee. And internally you're like, I don't want to spend $12 on a cup of coffee right now.
Yeah.
Or, like I've experienced this so much where like a bunch of girls will like go out to dinner and they split this bill
Mhm.
that's crazy, let alone Jewish, kosher food. Like you can literally end up with a bill over $1,000, and you're each stuck with a bill of like 200 and something dollars now, after
Mhm.
like taxes and after all the things that you split that you don't even get to touch half of it. And you're sitting there going, forget about, sometimes you might just literally not want to pay, or you might be like, I want to spend this money on other things, or you literally might not have it. And
Mhm.
that's a huge part too, because especially as adults, a lot of people are not like, hey, like, why don't you just come over and we'll watch a movie? Like,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, like, that's the reality. As cute as that sounds, and I'm so down. And if Stephanie lived next to me, we'd totally do that.
Mhm.
But, I think as adults, we're like, oh, let's go out for a game of golf. Let's go out to eat. Let's go out for coffee. Let's have a spa day. You're doing things. And, like, quite frankly, I'm sorry, they literally cost money. And not everyone has the extra finances to do those things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that can be a barrier for sure. And something that I think is worthy of mentioning, I know we talked about it a little bit before about the pandemic and how that might have been a little bit of a nail in the coffin for why people feel more isolated than ever. We were locked down for at least a year, and depending on where you
2 years.
were, yeah. Well, the New York and us for sure. It was depending on where you were. Some states,
A lot of the world was locked up for
a lot of the world, yeah, and certain areas were a little bit longer than others.
for sure.
And but also some of us were like there's more restrictions in the northern states because
Mhm.
you couldn't go outside in the middle of winter. So what are you going to do? Like you can't really do much of like a lot. You can't go out to places because of the lockdown. You can't go outside because it's cold, this and that. But anyway, there's a whole lot of different reasons that maybe were more isolated, and especially the younger generation, the people, the kids who are in school or growing up. I truly believe that they were the ones that were most affected. I know that right after and during, I was getting a lot of clients who were feeling a lot of social anxiety about going back when things were starting to reopen again. They felt as though they were disconnected from their friends. Some had a really great experience depending on
Right.
what they were allowed to do and all of that, but others really isolated. And a lot of times there
Mhm.
was depression and social isolation, amongst other things as well. Like there was food scarcity for a little bit, which definitely caused some people to stress with people who had eating disorders. So a lot of things. But unfortunately, there were some milestones that I believe a lot of people were unable to have that were big social
Mhm.
things. I know my brother, he was a graduating class of 2020, and they didn't have a graduation, they didn't have a
Yeah.
prom. They just said they were going to close schools for 2 weeks and never reopened. So there were some friends that he really wouldn't talk to again. There were some friends that, and he still has, and like they were always out, like friends outside of that. But there we all had like the school friends that's like we're not going to talk after this, maybe like social media a little bit, but we're not going to like hang out. And then they didn't have that closure. College experience was really weird after that. But then I'm noticing too, I have a lot of clients that are in the school system as like professionals in the school system,
Mhm.
and it's really interesting in different grade levels. depending on where they were in the pandemic time, that they are having a harder time when they're reporting. The kids are having a harder time with the social aspect, with the sitting and learning aspect, and there's a stuntedness with that. So I think I could go really on and on about this. The digital fatigue. We were literally living online. There was nothing in person. We were doing school online.
And now we're all asking ourselves why we're addicted. Hello.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then on top of that, and I'm not going to get too into it, but I do think that there was a lot of divisiveness on it, and then a lot of people lost friends,
Mhm.
adults wise, and that's really disheartening for differences in opinions and whatnot, whether that be political or regarding the pandemic that was around that area, where a lot of people there was a lot of infighting and a lot of friendships and family relationships were lost, and I think that that does cause a lot of anxiety with regards to what you can like who you can trust, what you can open up about, what you can't. And that's a really unfortunate side effect of that time as well.
Yeah, 100%. It's
Mm,
really been it's crazy. And like I mentioned before, this can be something that it really can result in being dangerous.
yeah.
Uh, Listen, I think there is definitely a difference in experiencing loneliness and being alone. Like we said, and I think so many songs quote this concept of like being in a room full of people and feeling alone, right? So we can experience loneliness and be around many, many, many people. And then we can be completely and utterly physically alone and be at complete peace with ourselves and not experience loneliness. So I think that that's something to just keep in mind as well. I always found it so interesting. I think like everyone can laugh from today until tomorrow, but I feel like one of the first people that really taught me how to put this concept into words was Britney Spears. When she would like, no, but like seriously, when she would sing about like a lot of her songs, I think talked about this topic of like she's constantly around people, this like humongous figure, and she was utterly alone, like constantly surrounded by people and crying herself to sleep. And I think it's something that a lot of people who are famous talk about, this being a thing where they're in these hotel rooms and they're seeing different people every day, and all the people around them are making money off of them or want something from them or are using them, and they don't know who to trust, and no one actually cares about their well-being, and it's a very lonely experience. There's no true relationships happening there. I mean,
Mhm.
not to generalize, I'm sure some of them have wonderful families and healthy relationships. I'm not saying like, oh, if you're famous then this is like you're, this is a curse on your life, but I think it's something that a lot of them relate to, and a lot of them um a lot of them experience. But my point is, it, this is something that money can't fix. This is something that it's not it doesn't discriminate. Like
Mhm.
every gender and every background and religion and culture and experience of life can experience this immense loneliness. um and understand that like if you're constantly surrounded by people and you are experiencing this feeling, you're not crazy. It is a real thing to have that even when you're surrounded by people.
Mhm. Yeah. And sometimes the bigger the group, the more lonely you can feel. But you know what? The real thing at the end of the day is that there's not one right or wrong. And what might be right for you might not be the thing that is the best thing for someone else. So some people really prefer a lot of acquaintances and maybe have like one person that they could confide in. And that's
Mhm.
totally good for them. And another person might need a little bit more and have no need or desire for any type of surface level connections, but really just find a very close circle of friends or family is enough for them. And what we want to make sure, something that I always like to say when it comes to social relationships, is to diversify. We don't like, just like we diversify our investments and whatnot, we want to be able to have people that we can confide in. Maybe you have some surface level if that's what you want, to have some people that you could just um, I realize it's I don't know the right terminology for it without using profanity. So just like shoot the breeze or whatever it is. I'm like, what is it saying? We want sometimes to people just like, hey, how are you, type of thing. But I really would encourage you to have at least one person
Yes.
that you can really connect to, that you really can confide in. Ideally, if you can have a couple people, because God forbid that something happened to that person, or that person is a person that you need to deal with a struggle with, you might want another person, or that person for some reason is not a part of your life anymore. If we have a little bit of diversity with that, so what I mean is maybe you have some family relationships, maybe some friendships, maybe a romantic relationship, but having multiple people in whatever context that makes the most sense for you. And that's something that you need to be honest with yourself about. If you have a therapist, they can help you. And if you feel as though you just have a lot of surface level friendships, look for opportunity and see, is there someone or multiple people that I might be able
Mhm.
to uh, tend to a little bit more, and have this be more of a serious relationship, friendship, whatever it is, and
Mhm.
that person is a real connection as opposed to just like a surface level.
Yeah, and I think that that's something to always keep in mind as well when, like, Stephanie's 100% right. If you already have groups of friends and you don't feel like you have close friends, like, definitely make it a priority to see if there's the potential of any of those friends being closer friends who, like, really understand you, really know what's happening in your life, like, that you can go to with very real and serious things, for better or for worse. And if you're in the process of making friends, I think your brain needs to be separated into separate categories. Like, if you meet someone and you're realizing, I'm not about to tell this person my deepest, darkest secrets, don't write them off, because
Mhm.
it's also great to have someone that's just like, hey, do you want to go to the movies? Or, like, do you want to hang out? Or do you want to do something fun? And it's not a bad thing. It's just, I think that there are different people for different seasons, and different people have different types of relationships with you. It's always great to have, I don't want to say like leaving people like on your back burner, because that's a horrible statement, but just this concept of having different friends for different events of life, or
Mhm.
understanding that, like, different people in your life serve different purposes. Not every single person is the person that needs to know all the ins and outs of your experience of the world. And you
Mhm.
could still enjoy talking to them and enjoy their presence and enjoy doing fun things with them. So when you're meeting people, don't be so quick to write somebody off. A and B, um keep in the back of your head, when you are, like, talking to people, what is something that you genuinely search, literally like dating, like, what is something that you genuinely search for in a relationship, that you're generally looking for, that would make you trust somebody, that would make you open up. And when you're starting to feel like you're building that level of trust and rapport with another person, see, hey, is this the person that is one of the people I can add to my close one, two, three people that really gets me, that I can really call in tears when I need to, and trust with my heart. Because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I think every single person in the world, whether you're the kind of person that would prefer 500 people over two people, or would prefer two people over anything else, every person needs someone, at
Mhm.
least I would say honestly, one to three people
Mhm.
that they can genuinely have a real relationship with, like the people who actually get you, who know, like, the ugly sides and the annoying sides, and, like, love and accept all of you. And I can just tell you from a psychological and health perspective that you can have all the acquaintances on planet Earth, but if you don't have that, you are going to experience loneliness.
Mhm. And we would be remiss if we didn't talk about social anxiety in this topic, because social anxiety is one of the biggest barriers to fostering connections and to really developing relationships, but even putting yourself out there and being vulnerable. And that could come from a million different things, just anxiety in general. It could come from prior experience. We are social creatures by nature. In the past, like talking way past, like we were very, very dependent on each other for survival. So, like, our innate desire to connect with people
Mhm.
is so strong. And if we feel as though we ever have been rejected or made fun of or whatever it is, that can be a visceral reaction, can come from that. So
Mhm.
we want to do everything we can to avoid rejection, avoid having people who don't like us. We want to be liked, all of that. So the thing that I would say here that you could take away when it comes to social anxiety is two things. That one, unfortunately, the thing with anxiety is that the more we feed into it and give into it, it gets stronger. So with social anxiety, let's say because you're trying to avoid feeling anxious, because naturally that's what we want to do as human beings, when someone asks you to do something, you say no, then just because of anxiety, not because of any other reason, then it becomes stronger and harder the next time that someone asks you to do something to say yes. So the way that we want to work with that, I always like to liken it to a rubber band, that we don't want to stretch and just like break it. We want to slowly expand it. So the rubber band can be our comfort zone, and it's stretchy, but we want to stretch it slowly but surely. So is there one thing that you can do to stretch it a little bit if that's what you're dealing with? Is it saying yes to someone? Is it just really recognizing that this is a relationship that I can be safe in if I allow myself to be, and reaching out to that person, just finding that one step that's slowly going to stretch that band, and the next time it'll be a little easier. And unfortunately, again, this could be a whole other topic. Unfortunately, it is possible that you get rejected. It is possible that someone's not going to like you. That is just kind of the law of large numbers, that there's a probability that it's a possibility that we can be rejected, or someone doesn't want to be our friend. That's something that's hard to deal with, but it's something that you can get through. And it's something that is a part of life. No matter how much that sucks, it is something that you can get through and keep going in the face of, keep doing the things that can be helpful for you.
Hmm. I think something that's really important to mention here as well, as we've been in and out of the topic of social media and how technology has played a role in loneliness versus connection, something that I just want everyone to keep in the back of their head is having somebody like your post, or you feeling validated by a stranger that doesn't know the first thing about you or lives a million miles away. That is something that I think sometimes, not that people confuse it for friendship, but that instant validation and gratification gives you a very similar feeling that friendship gives you, but in like almost like, I'm
More
gonna sound
intense.
really intense now, but it's like you're shooting up a drug. Like for 1 second, it gives you that like, oh, I'm connected and I'm loved and I'm this and I'm that. And then it's gone, and then you're craving it again. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're going to be in that forever push and pull and constant feeling of loneliness if you are getting that from an online source.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep that in the back of your head, not to confuse genuine connection and friendship and relationship with validation online from
Mm-hmm.
complete and total strangers.
Yeah, because the second that you're also not getting all those likes, it could feel the same way as if your friend group didn't ask you to go out when everyone else is going out together. It can really start to feel as though, like, what's wrong with me? Why are people rejecting me? And it could be a really difficult situation to navigate when it comes to social media, and finding ourselves validated or getting the dopamine hits through those likes, or on the contrary, the dopamine, um, unwanted dopamine detox of it being, you're not getting those reinforcements.
Absolutely. So let's just also go into some of the things that we can do to help, support this problem and manage it, and hopefully create friendships when you are experiencing this loneliness. So we want to build like a social network and identify possible connections and then foster those connections, right? So keeping in mind, what is the actual goal? Because sometimes I feel like it feels very overwhelming to go from I don't know anyone to how do I get from that point to I have a group of friends or I have a friend or whatever. So we really want to build emotional intimacy, and that could be one person at a time, one event at a time, one grocery shop at a time. Just like connect to other human beings. Like Steph said, take those small risks, say yes, even when you are too scared to say yes, or when it's uncomfortable to go out. For those of you who are introverts, like recognize your social battery and recharge. Like don't deplete yourself, but also don't be scared to challenge yourself, because it might not ever feel like the first thing you want to do to go to an event full of
Mhm.
people that you don't know, but you might need to rip off that band-aid in order to get to your end goal. Um, and this really goes for everyone, like prioritizing that in-person connection over the phone, FaceTime, text messages. It's just, especially when you're starting from ground zero and you don't know anybody and you're trying to form relationships, do anything you can do in person to help create those relationships. When nobody even knows you, it's going to be a lot easier to do that in person. Well, let me rephrase that. It'll be easier in certain ways to do that in person and harder in other ways. But if you want to get to the point of having true relationships, it is more ideal to do that in person. Um,
Mhm.
Taking in that piece of community that we talked about, whether that's related to culture or something else, find that thing that you like and see what your, your town, your city, your, your area around you, just like what does your community provide that can help you connect to someone else. And guys, I'm sorry, like don't come at me, but sometimes it's going to feel really old school. Like go to a library class.
Yes,
I'm not
that's
even kidding
always
you.
my
Like
go-to.
literally go to a library class, go to a gym, go to a cooking class, join like, I don't know, a poetry read at a coffee
Yeah.
shop, like anything. Just get out of your house because you're not going to meet someone from the inside of your bed.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Business
I don't.
networking events, there's so many different things that you can do. And I think that we forget of how many things our community really does offer. You just need to look for it.
Right, because honestly, those are not the things that people are talking about on TikTok and Instagram. And so like,
Mhm.
so I remember one time I was walking my kids into the library and I think I was very disconnected from the library until I had children.
Mhm.
And being introduced to that world and walking in and just seeing this literal magazine of
Yep.
events and classes and workshops, which by the way, a lot of them are free. And I'm sitting there going, this is a thing?
Yeah.
What? Like, this is so cool. And not only is it a thing, but when I would go at certain hours to the library with my kids, I would see there are people sitting in the like teens, kids, adults, older adults, like every age under the sun, mommy and me classes for the moms who are feeling isolated. Get out, connect with other people who are in a similar stage of life as you. And if you are really dead set on using your phone, there are actually apps to help you meet up with people.
Mhm.
So whether that's some of the Instagram communities that some people have built online through different groups or different followings. I don't know if you have any idea who this is, Steph, but I follow an account called Girl with No Job, and they have a community called like the Toasters. A- and a lot of people will know this because they have like a crazy, 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 crazy following
Mhm.
to the point where it has gone offline and they created a camp. They created like girls groups on Facebook, like girls that are that started from here and they all have anxiety, girls who started from here and they all live in Long Island, girls who started from here and they all are obsessed with bagels. I don't even know. I'm telling you, they have a group for everything. And they've literally had, because I used to be in some of these groups, like the girls would actually go with a bunch of strangers that they met. They would rent like a place for the weekend and they would all go and like have like a fun weekend together. I was like, this is crazy. But it really happened. And it's still going on, by the way. So for anyone who doesn't know the Oshrai sisters, like Claudia and Margot and Jackie and Olivia, shout out to all of you because you guys like literally built an empire. But they're like the sweetest things. It's actually funny. One of them lives where I live. I won't say where. And I bumped into her in person and she was such a sweetie. But at the end
Oh,
of the day, it's really like use the power of the internet for good is honestly my point.
yeah.
I believe that there's an app called Meetup that sometimes people use to meet up with other people who live in their area that
I
want to
think
just hang out. It's
so.
like a dating app, but for literally for friends,
I
which
think
is
the Bumble has like a friends thing, like Bumble for friends or something. I don't know
yeah.
if
I'm a
anyone.
little less connected to the stuff online, but it does exist. So if you want to use the online platforms,
Yeah.
at least use it for something that's going to help you foster those relationships.
And be safe, guys. Just be
Yes,
safe.
obviously we mean do this safely. Don't encourage your kids to do this because that would not be safe. But like as adults, hopefully you can sniff out some red flags. And don't go anywhere alone with someone in the middle of nowhere where you don't know them and they don't know you, and don't put yourself in a dangerous situation, please, for the love of God.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
keeping that in the back of your head, because that's not what we're promoting here.
Mm-mm.
Also, just like learning to receive love, learning to receive connection, learning to open yourself up and open your heart up to possible rejection, but also possible new relationships, the same way
Yeah.
that you would again with dating. It the connection is going to require that vulnerability that's sometimes really scary to experience and to give of yourself.
Mhm.
But vulnerability is that bridge that it creates the connection. It's where it grows and where you can share your truth with somebody to foster those real relationships.
Mhm.
Um, Therapy and support groups, I think, are really great to utilize some of these tools and practice having those relationships. But I don't like if you're going to a therapist because it feels good to have like a paid best friend every week that's like talking to you about all your problems, we are so here for you. And honestly, sometimes Steph and I have said this in previous episodes. Sometimes we have clients that in our head we're like, if you weren't my client, we'd totally be friends. But
Mhm.
that is not your friend. Like I'm just gonna say that bluntly and directly. It's not. And so that might feel good. And if that's doing something to manage your mental health, great. But don't confuse that with having a friend. So just
Right.
going to put that out there for you. Um, and just practice being present, mindful in the moment. Put down your phone, step away from the computer, step away from the TV, go out and go into the world and live life and meet humans.
Yeah. And when you are with others, put your phone down and be fully present with them. I hate to say it, but it is rude when we have our phones and we're trying to talk to other people. But it never feels good being on the receiving end when you're trying to have a
Mhm.
conversation with someone and they're constantly checking their phone or things like that. And I think that really can get in the way of a lot of relationships. So if you're going out to eat, I know sometimes we need to keep it handy because we need to be in contact for God forbid an emergency or something like that. But we don't need to check every single text message that comes through and maybe just putting it has to be on the table, put it face down. And if someone needs to get a hold of you, they'll call and hopefully you can tend to that. So just give yourself the respect of being fully present and give the person that you're with the respect of being fully present as well. All right, guys. So this brings us to our listeners' question. If you aren't aware, we do take a little bit of time at the end of each session to answer one of your questions. You could send us over questions for a chance to be featured over to our Instagram at Coffee and Counseling Podcast or email it over to us at coffeeandcounselingpodcast@gmail.com. So today's listener's question is I've been working on setting more boundaries lately, but I feel so guilty. What do I do about it? There is so much we could say about it. So I think that we're going to have to try to be really, really succinct with trying to respond. So a couple things that I would say, I'll try to make it quick, is if you never have done a lot of boundaries or set a lot of boundaries, it is normal and typical to feel that guilt. Now, is it appropriate? Probably not. That's something that I hope that you're working closely with the therapist or that you're really being honest with yourself to know that these boundaries are the appropriate boundaries. Because if they are, then guilt, if we're looking at it from the function of what guilt is as an emotion, guilt is meant to make us not repeat something. And it can be appropriate in certain areas. Like if you hurt someone intentionally, then guilt is an appropriate emotion. Setting a boundary is a healthy boundary is not something that guilt is an appropriate emotion for. It doesn't mean you don't feel it. We can validate the feeling with also recognizing that maybe it's not the appropriate feeling and we need to work through that and why setting these boundaries are making you feel that way. And also just continuing to work on setting those healthy boundaries. You might get some pushback at first. And if you do, that might be because they're not used to these boundaries that you're setting, or they're not familiar with boundaries, but it is healthy for all parties involved. So keep setting them and they will get easier for you.
Yes. And I'm just going to add to that. I'll give you a tool, a general tool to help with this, which is using reality checking. So take a moment to ask yourself, like, what do I actually feel guilty about? Was I rude in setting my boundary? Was I completely dismissive of the other human beings' like experience of the world? If you respectfully and kindly set a boundary to protect yourself from somebody who is like causing you distress, harm, inappropriate behavior, whatever it is, ask yourself, like, in all honesty, what are you even feeling guilty about? If your friend was setting the same boundary that you are currently setting to protect themselves and they told you they feel guilty, would you look at them and feel like, about what? You know,
Mhm.
if you're able to do that for a friend, ask yourself to do that for you, and reality check with yourself. This is a real emotion, but is it based off of a real legitimate and rational reason as to why I should feel guilty? Because that in itself might kind of pull you out of that space of feeling guilty. Keep in mind, when you're setting a boundary for the first time, especially with people who have less of an awareness of how they um behave with other people, or how they control themselves, or their lack of control, or how they treat other people, or you're dealing with a toxic person, the first time you're setting those boundaries, they are going to push back. You're setting boundaries for the first time. It's going to feel super uncomfy, and like Steph said, that's totally normal. Don't make that a you problem. That's a them problem. As long as you're doing something kindly and respectfully, and you're giving them the opportunity to change, and it's just like seriously harming your inner peace, that's a them problem.
Mhm.
So try, and you guys know Steph and I are not the type to tell clients like the world revolves around you. So when I say that's a you problem, I say that coming from that coming from that space. So just keep that in
Mhm.
mind, and hopefully that helps.
Great. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for our session today. We are encouraging you guys to try to engage with one person this week. Like real talk, no small talk. I mean, you could have a small talk, but little small talk, and really getting into real connection, real talk, putting the phones down. And we encourage you to reflect too on the last time that you really allowed someone to get to know you. Loneliness is something that we can deal with when we choose connection intentionally. And we have offered you some tips in this session to help you with that. If you know anyone that this could be helpful for, we ask that you kindly share this session with them. And everything we mentioned today will be linked in the show notes. But we hope you enjoyed today's session and that you join us again next Tuesday.
Okay, guys, like, subscribe, and let us know what you're thinking in the comments. Hope you have a great week, and thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Please follow our Instagram at Coffee and Counseling Podcast and send any questions you have about any topic to us via direct message for a chance for your question be featured in one of our next sessions. You can also email us your questions or topic suggestions at coffeeandcounselingpodcast@gmail.com. Make sure to check out some of our other sessions available to you right now. Once you drink up all of those and your coffee, come back next Tuesday for our next session.
The information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute therapy or mental health advice. Listening to this podcast does not establish a therapeutic relationship between you and the hosts. If you are in need of support, we encourage you to seek help from a qualified mental health professional. This podcast is not a substitute for individualized care. We do offer individualized therapy. If you're interested in individual therapy with one of us, please visit our practice website and send us an email to set up a free consultation call. All of the links and our contact info will be in the show notes.